I said earlier, the great history of Clarion swimming and diving. And this is one of the great divers in NCAA Division II history, a 4-time national champion, a 2-time National Diver of the Year. Ladies and gentlemen, Collin Vest. So I've made this joke only about a half dozen times now because I'm very unoriginal. And it really has started to hit me that I'm getting old now because athletes that were athletes when I was here, it used to just be that all you Hall of Famers were people I didn't know. And now it's people that were here when I started here. And so it's fun to get a chance to interview you here, Collin, having known you as a student athlete a little bit. And in particular, I always enjoyed when you competed at nationals, getting the phone calls from Coach Rovat that usually had a couple expletives sprinkled in about how good he thought you did. But talk a little bit about what his coaching style did for you and how you felt like that was a good match for you two as a competitor and coach.
Yeah, I mean, he was definitely very blunt in his coaching style, to say the least, but always the most supportive one that we had, creating a competitive environment. I mean, every single day at training, we were competing for a national title, essentially, against each other. And he knew how to kind of modify his coaching to each individual, which not many have the ability to. And I had a pretty special background just kind of knowing his coaching style. I mean, my sister dove for him a couple years before I did and made a pretty easy decision to know that he could help me achieve some great things.
So you liked the fact that he was direct. He'd give you pretty clear. Can you give us an example? Like what? Can you give us an example?
There's a few things that I've heard that he's called me maybe under the water after the fact. Maybe some short jokes that he's thrown out there before, of just maybe simple-minded, of just simple things. He held us to a high standard, to be critical of everything that we did. And knowing, because when we showed up to nationals, everybody knew when Clarion was there, expect minimal mistakes. And funny enough, we were probably the least serious team that were there. We liked to mess with each other quite a bit, but that added into being able to handle pretty much any stage we were on.
You look at the rosters of this team, on the men's side, on the women's side, where everybody is a multiple-time All-American. You have so many multiple-time national champions or national champions in general. You alluded to it. You talked about that competition every day in practice. One of your former teammates is coaching here now. He's sitting at that table. What were those days like working together with your teammates?
We would push each other every day, find some way to make sure that we could compete. I mean, starting off right from freshman year, I looked at Heath and said, I'm following you every day at practice because I want to beat you. I want to compete with you. And that's something that we really thrived on just as a team, pushing each other, holding each other to that high standard of making sure, there were no dives off, let alone days off.
You mentioned that one of the rites of passage on the team was when you finally knew you were like a senior leader, is when, well, you tell them, what was the big moment? What was the torch passing moment?
It was always a special moment when we got to take front seat of the van, sit next to Rovat there. And really, it was so special because that's when we really got to pick his brain, learn about him, his background more, how amazing of a diver he was when he was at Clemson, let alone how phenomenal of a coach he was and the successes he had there, the reasons why he did things and why he had the method he did. And I mean, in my brief coaching career, I used a lot of that and what I learned from him in that to try to guide others.
So if you had multiple upperclassmen, multiple seniors, was there a pecking order? Did you have to fight over it? Did you dive off for it? How'd you get the front seat?
I think there might have been some times where folks were fighting over it a little bit, but it was also who wanted to sit up there as well, who wasn't going to sleep the whole way. But it was a special thing to be able to take that front seat over.
So competing at nationals the ways you did, thing that sticks out to me is there were, I think, a couple instances this happened, but notably in 2015 where you changed a dive on the last attempt, needing an incredible score, more than 70 points, I think, to win, which for those that don't know is a hell of a score for an individual dive. And you had the courage, the confidence to pull that off. Tell us about winning that national championship in that fashion.
Yeah, I mean, that was my only 3-meter title that year. We had kind of prepped a dive, a double out it was called, front 2.5 pike, 2 twist on 3-meter. And we, after losing 1 meter, we kind of had the conversation like, hey, we might have to pull this out if we want to, step up. And it was, I think maybe I warmed it up twice that morning at like 7 a.m. And that was the first time I even trained the dive since like January, 2 months prior. And it was, Rovat looked at me and said, we might need to pull this out. And I just was kind of like, okay. So a couple divers are going, and comes up to the diver right before me. And we're still trying to make the decision. He'd stand in there next to us, going, come on, like, let's do it. Like, we're doing it. So finally the diver right before me hits the water and he goes, okay, like, we're doing it. Like, we got to do it. It's put up or shut up pretty much. So I run up, climb the ladder, and tell them, like, hey, like, I want to change my dive, and you got to wait for that process to kind of go through them changing the system. And it was a pretty cool feeling, like coming out of the hurdle of that dive. When my feet touched the board, I kind of had a pretty good idea of I've had it, and then it didn't really need to look up at the scoreboard, but just knowing by the sound when I came up that.
When you do something like that, do people around the board talk like, oh, he's going to do it? They're whispering to each other like, oh, like crap, like he's changing it to something crazy.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely grumblings, whisperings going along after like you make that announcement like that you're going to change the dive. I remember the kid from Grand Valley, Ian, who came up to me afterwards, and he was like, just a world of diving. Everybody's very supportive, competitors and everything. But he came up and he was like, I thought I had you, and then you changed that dive, and I was in, some choice words, but he was like, I knew like you got me, and I couldn't believe you hit it, but like that was awesome.
Collin, is there anybody here that you'd like to thank tonight?
Of course, Rovat, Van Dyke, Bree, I mean, just for all the work that they've done, all teammates and everything, family. There's a lot of folks that I would not have been able to do what I did without them. So.
Ladies and gentlemen, Collin Vest.